Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
How's it going?
Ruben Bressler.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. How you doing?
It is a wonderful, wonderful day to talk about the top 10 Ravnica Allegiance cards. I'm pumped. But of course, we also began with the choice of the top comment from last week, or at least the last top 10 show, in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 angels. Ruben?
Lots of great choices. We got angels all around us. But the winner I decided to go with this week was from 1114, who writes, "There's so many good angels, it's hard to say any one in particular was missed. Desolation Angel, Sigarda, Sublime Archangel, etc. are all great cards, but I'm putting out what I feel is the only Orzhov Angel that really lived up to the hype. Angel of Despair is powerful, has striking art, and enters the battlefield with a good, clean effect everyone wants. Destroy target permanent. Then beat down with a 5/5 flyer. That's good, clean magic right there."
Well, it certainly is, and I remember back in the day for when Ravnica was releasing, like, this was hot fire. Like, this was super exciting. It saw a ton of play. This is where the solar flare decks and stuff showed up. So, like, this girl got to see lots of play and was hyped and was played and was an all-star from Ravnica.
Yeah, an old school reanimator target, old school dredge target. This was something that you are usually, ideally, you're not paying full value for, but if you have an effect like that you can exploit, it's ripe to be reanimated.
Absolutely. Won a Pro Tour, obviously, and was recently reprinted as an uncommon, downshifted in Ultimate Masters. So to this day, still gaining a new audience.
I mean, I'm ready for the common shift, so we can just get that in a popper. Let's just make it happen. It's fine. It'll be great. It won't break anything.
I don't think that's
giant monster. Okay, great. Well, congratulations to 1114 for an awesome comment. Contact us over social media to get your $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. Contact us usually over as the moderators on our subreddit, or hit up Erin if she hasn't blocked you already on Twitter. You know how it is.
Right.
just day after day. Well, look, this first 3 cards I'm going to be pretty quiet about because they're all higher on someone else's list.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, but we do have some pretty cool sames going on here, which we'll talk about later. Nice. But for number 10, number 9, number 8, I don't have anything for Ravnica Allegiance, but I will, thanks to your all's list. Just the way it is. But Ruben, can you kick us off?
It just means we agree that these cards are awesome.
Yeah.
It's true. Which means, Ruben, kick us off with our number 10.
My number 10 is a card that has a sentence on it that has consistently, every time it's been printed on a card, meant that card retains its value for its entire lifespan. It's only been printed, I think, 2 or 3 times before. But every single time you can have any number of cards named something in your deck, it always means that card is worth money. Yep. My number 10 is Persistent Petitioners. 1 colorless and 1 blue mana gets you a 1/3 Human Advisor. It's a common. Pay a colorless and tap, target player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Tap 4 untapped advisors you control. Target player puts the top 12 cards of their library into their graveyard. And the key, the piece de resistance, a deck can have any number of cards named Persistent Petitioners.
Oh boy.
Rat Colony, Relentless Rats, Shadowborn Apostle, I think are the 3. This is the first time that it's been non-black, I think.
Yep. And wow, they're $3 right now. It's a $3
I believe it. They are.
Why?
Because unlike most cards where you'll need a maximum of 4, all your Chase Mythics, you can still only run 4.
Yeah.
You can run 35 in your EH deck. You can run 22 in your constructed standard deck. Whatever you want to do. I've been saving up my Persistent Petitioners to start building a commander deck of my own.
Of course you are.
I haven't even decided what the commander is yet. All I know is that I want it to be a Persistent Petitioners deck. So I'm deciding between like Sidisi, Brood Tyrant, maybe Kami of the Crescent Moon, potentially Grand Arbiter Augustin the Fourth. You know, I'm thinking about all the different cool combos that you can do with Persistent Petitioners. Things like cards like Retraced Image, Mask of the Mimic, Blood Bond March, Remembrance. There are some really cool tricks that you can do with Persistent Petitioners in Commander. Probably not going to make it in Constructed, but you know what? It is so unique. That's what it's on the list for.
Wow. Relentless Rats has been reprinted 5 times, and they're still not worth less than $1. It doesn't matter.
I believe it.
It doesn't matter. It's just a common. Does not matter. Of course, Shadowborn Apostle has only been printed once in Magic 2014. Is now worth $4 a copy.
Yep. I believe it.
Currently,
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Every single one. It's just it's those magic words. You can run any number.
I know when I first started building my She-Ray deck, I went to Tapped Out because I'm a filthy net decker, and one of the top decks on Tapped Out was like 20 Shadowborn Apostles, She-Ray, and a bunch of demons, and I was like. And people always would see, like when I would show people my She-Ray deck, they're like, oh, you're not on Shadowborn Apostle? And I was like, no, am I supposed to be? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, because if you sacrifice them all to She-Ray, you get your demon, and then they all come back. And I'm like, well, that's annoying.
The best Shadowborn Apostle deck I saw was on Command Zone, where Josh Lee Kwai played Athreos. Which gets all your Shadowborn Apostles back, and also lets you play the card Edgewalker, which means that all your Shadowborn Apostles are free.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was a problem. Anyway, so yeah, Persistent Petitioner is just a very exciting card. I think it's going to be, just hold on to every copy. It's rare that you can identify which commons are going to be super expensive for years to come. You don't always have the obvious Manamorphose. You don't always have the obvious Simian Spirit Guide that you need to put into a box and save for later. Persistent Petitioners is a pretty easy bet.
Yeah, it's pretty trivial. And for those who were like, oh my god, what combo is he talking about? Edgewalker was an uncommon from Scourge, so that's how like random that is. It's a black, white, and a generic mana for a 2/2 that makes your cleric spells cost 1 black and 1 white less to play.
Yep.
So that's very powerful. Usually it only reduces colorless costs, not actual colored costs.
Not colored mana. Yeah.
So that's very powerful. But Aaron, what is your number 10?
So a lot of the cards on my list are either cards that I opened at the pre-release and didn't use, or they're cards that I opened and you saw me play on camera, because being at the pre-release was it gave me a great first impression of the format. So you may recognize a lot of these cards, but my number 10 is a card that I opened and that I wasn't really able to play because I didn't have enough to make it work, but it was a card I was instantly attracted to. I'm very much a black mage. I'm fine paying life. You know, I've been in the negatives before. It's cool. And so when you can turn your life into an engine, that's something I'm very, very interested in. And the art is just so macabre as well, too. I'm just like, every once in a while, I'm always surprised when Wizards goes there. And we kind of saw this a little bit with Death to the Deathless, but this is a whole other ball game. My number 10 is Font of Agonies. So Font of Agonies is 1 black. It's an enchantment. It says whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies. You can pay 1 in a black and remove 4 blood counters from Font of Agonies to destroy target creature. Now, you don't have to sacrifice the enchantment, so it stays. So if you're doing Orzhov things, which a lot of times require life, like I think Final Debt or Final Payment, a lot of life, paying cards in the set, you're sort of able to put blood counters on them and then have sort of unconditional removal. And the art is just gruesome. You see sort of these 2, fountains of blood. You see 2 dead-looking folks like catching them with their hands or with cups, and then they're in a glass of blood, in a goblet of blood, and so the art is great. I love what it does. I love the engine you can build, and if you have enough in your deck to really keep it going, you can really do some neat things with that.
It's neat because this is the type of card that they couldn't make it any cheaper. They're like, okay, fine, you get it on turn 1, go nuts, because you really have to have a bunch of enablers to make this thing worth it. Multiples are not very good. I guess are okay, because they would, you know what I mean? Like at that point, you're in definite kitchen table area, which is cool too. But I think more sort of Commander-esque would be a better choice for a card like this.
Yeah, paying life in Commander, you have so much more of it, and you have so many more options.
Right.
Yeah.
The obvious connection to this in Standard is, of course, the Shocklands, where you only have to play 2 of them untapped in order to get the full value on Font of Agonies, and of course the ability costs 2 mana. So that's a pretty cool thing that you can do with Font of Agonies. Obviously, in the older formats, anything that you're paying life to get a resource for everyone's a big fan of ever since Necropotence showed that was an unbelievable resource that you could take advantage of. Font of Agony is a very cool card.
Yeah, it's super neat. There's a bunch of different options. For example, you have a Danto Vanguard that could immediately turn this card on.
Yeah,
on turn 2, which is pretty neat. As well as Doom Whisperer is a pretty good option.
That's a good one too. I like it.
Which is very cool. And Vona, Butcher of Moggon.
Ooh,
remember that mythic?
Pay 7? Yeah.
Pay 7 and destroy a non-land permanent. I mean,
I like it.
Just saying, there's a lot of options here you can go with.
Cool.
That said, let's move over here to number 9. Again, mine is so cool, you'll hear about it later.
Yeah.
But Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number 9, we just talked about a very powerful enchantments, and I have actually found the limited format of Ravnica Allegiance to be very enchantment driven, to the point where I want to be main decking an enchantment removal card in the sealed format, because cards like Angelic Exaltation and Dovin's Acuity, and I've gotten by ill-gotten inheritance.
Oh yeah,
so many times. Like, my best story from this limited format is when I got by ill-gotten inheritance and Teysa, which doubles up your dying triggers, and I got 16'd by 2 of them. So that was not a fun game. But in a world dominated by enchantments, perhaps there is no card that anyone would rather open in the limited environment that is Ravnica Allegiance than my number 9, which is Ethereal Absolution. Ethereal Absolution is 4 colorless, a white and a black for an enchantment. It is also a story-relevant card from this set, which we'll get to in just a moment. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1. And if that weren't enough, pay 4 mana, 2 colorless, white and a black. Exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. If it was a creature card, you create a 1/1 black and white spirit creature token with flying. So it's an army in a can, it's graveyard recursion, it's a Curse of Death's Hold, and it's a Glorious Anthem, all for the low cost of 6 mana. Oh, by the way, Kaya killed all the ghosts.
And she killed all the guys.
Yeah, well, it's more that she kind of let them free. I actually feel really, really strongly about this story moment, and I know several of the dedicated Orzhov members of the community do too. So basically, the way that this works in the story is that Teysa is in prison because she tried working with Tajik in the previous block to get rid of the Obzedat. The Obzedat found out and her plan failed, and so they sort of put her in this tower, kind of like Rapunzel. As Kaya's taking over the guild, she breaks Teysa out. Teysa is still not really sure what's going on, and then as sort of a little kind of screw you, Kaya frees all of the ghosts that were in debt to the Obzedat. And so there are a lot of theories as to what's going to happen. Like, can you just release a whole bunch of ghosts and have nothing happen? Where are those ghosts going to go? And so Kaya appears to be taking the Orzhov in a very different direction. And Teysa's not really sure. Like, if you look at the art, even she's like, I don't know about this. And so I really was not a fan of this. I like the corruption of the Orzhov. I love the mafia religion aspect of it, and so it'll be very interesting to see where they go with this. But I was not happy when I saw this. I was like, why?
I mean, I know what happens. I watch Ghostbusters. I remember when the ghosts just go everywhere, and it just gets crazy. It's gonna be sliming and stuff, and it's gonna be awesome. I'm ready for the Stay Puffed like Colossus thing. Yeah. It's gonna be great.
Picture a Twinkie.
Uncle Karlov. He's just gonna boom, boom.
That's right.
Yeah, this card is just an absolute ridiculous beating. It's insane because not only are you sort of what's the white Praetor Elish Norn. You're not Elish Norning them essentially, but you're making your own army with it. Like, it's
Brian
hard to.
This card. If you follow him on Twitter, his Twitter lately is nothing but like rants about this. It's great.
It's hard to kind of explain how completely game-changing this card is and continues to be, and you can't play any X1s anymore, and they're making their own army of 2/2 flyers, by the way, not just 1/1s, because it's pumping everybody. Whew, it's bananas.
I've lost unlosable games. I was like, man, the only card in the format that could possibly even make them not die next turn. And then they play it, and then I'm just dead immediately.
Yeah, it's insane. That said, Aaron, what's your number 9?
So I said that I wasn't happy with the direction the Orzhov were going in. It feels like they're going in a very different direction. But at least I can take pride in the fact that the Golgari are just sticking with what they know. And if anything, they're doubling down, which made me very, very happy. We're not taking back anything we've done. We're not feeling bad. We're not letting our zombies go, oh no, girl, we're making even better zombies. And my number 9 encompasses this. I howled when I saw this card. It's everything I want to be doing in life. My number 9 is Awaken the Erstwhile. So Awaken the Erstwhile is 3 black, 3 colorless, and 2 black. It's a sorcery. It says each player discards all the cards in their hand and then creates that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. I love this. This is everything I want. And it felt really good because we had seen the ethereal enchantment first. And I was like, ugh. And then I started to worry. I was like, oh no, does this mean the Golgari are going to be doing the same thing too? Are we going to be repenting? Are we going to be changing? And then the next day, the spoiler card came out and I was like, nope, we're good. And so for those who don't know, the Erstwhile, if I understand it correctly, are basically characters from the story that have been millennia, just like underground. Yeah. They've been kind of dead for a very, very long time. And Vraska gets the idea to dig them up and sort of make them her bodyguards and her enforcers. And I'm like, yes. And so very, very excited. This is a really neat card, black being the color of discard. It's not difficult to get things to a point where you're going to benefit more from this, to where your opponent has less cards than you. You're able to come out ahead on that. And who doesn't love zombies? And so this card is just everything, very on brand for me.
The Erstwhile are a delicate and sophisticated race of elves known as the Erstwhile. Once were an important faction in Ravnica. They were laid to rest in coffins in Umaralek.
Come on.
Mausoleum of the Erstwhile.
I don't even have that pulled up on my computer. I just know that for some reason.
Weird. They returned as zombie attendants of Vraska.
Vraska needed some bodyguards and found a nice army of zombies in cold storage, which was nice.
So good. And they're so creepy. They kind of remind me of, if you've ever seen The Mummy. Do you remember when Emotep had the jar full of ashes and then like those constructs would come out? That's what they kind of remind me of.
Yeah, these are the Erstwhile, which obviously the word Erstwhile means former. So these were a former huge power center in Ravnica, theoretically before the Guild Pact was even signed. And so great power there, but sort of put in cold storage. And Vraska is never one to let any resource go to waste. Being the first of the Golgari leaders to really embrace the crawl and some of the other underrepresented races. For a long time in the Golgari power structure was elves take over, Gorgons take over, elves take over, Gorgons take over, and that was just the power struggle. And all of the other races were sort of ignored. And Vraska said, wait a second, just like in the movie A Bug's Life, well, what if all the bugs are on my side? What if, there's a million of us, right? That's why James Woods, isn't it James Woods? Maybe it's Christian Walken. I think it is James Woods. James Woods is like, if they ever realize how many of them there are, we're done for. And so they took down the grasshoppers.
I just realized we should totally somebody needs to come up with Drunk Magic History. Have you ever seen Drunk History?
Absolutely.
Drunk History, but with like the magic version. Like, we're gonna get you drunk and you're gonna tell us about the history of the guild. I think that
I did that on one of my streams recently, where someone was like, what is magic? And then I was like, magic. I was drinking a lot that night. Magic is like a game, and then I just went off for like 20 minutes because they were new from Hearthstone.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it was pretty great.
That's great. All right, we're moving here to number 8. Once again, these cards are so sweet; they're higher up on someone else's list. So, Ruben, what is your number 8?
There has been an archetype brewing, ready for the spotlight, ready to be taken advantage of. Players have wanted to have access to this archetype since Return to Ravnica. It's never been playable before. But it's Gates' time to shine. It's the time of Gates. And the card that's enabling all of that is Plaza of Harmony. Plaza of Harmony is a rare land from the new set. When Plaza of Harmony enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. Tap, add a colorless, or tap, add 1 mana of any type that a gate you control could produce. Big deal.
This is the magic card that lets you essentially stay in the race against the red decks because you're the gate deck, so you're basically playing a turn behind everybody. So your turn, your 3-mana wrath, quote unquote, is actually a 4-mana wrath because you had to wait an extra turn for it.
So all of the good cards in the Gates deck, Guild Summit, Gates Ablaze, Gatebreaker, Ram, they all cost 3 mana. Even if you're playing something like Gateway Sneak, Deafening Clarion costs 3 mana if you're doubling up on your Sweltering Suns effect, your Anger of the Gods effect. Mm-hmm. So this card not only pulls you back in, not only fixes your mana, but comes into play untapped. Huge deal.
I have a bit of a confession to make. I played Maze's End back when it was standard legal.
Wow.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Wow.
Yeah. But you hit on a really good point, Ruben. You know, one of the flaws of the Maze's End deck back in the day is that you would run a lot of board wipes. And because so many of your lands came into play tapped, you were so often just behind a turn. You know, your merciless evictions, your things of that nature, you were always just behind. And so this is something that the Gates decks really needed to pad you and to keep you in the game so that you did have that extra turn so that you could untap and cast your Supreme Verdict, or you could cast your Kaya's Wrath or whatever it might be. You know, you're absolutely right. It does feel like whoever was, you know, behind this set recognized that flaw, knew where the meta was going to be going, and it is, I think it is real. I've seen a number of people playing decks, and I'm just like, it's I think it might be better than Maze's End was. Yeah. I
was playing Gates in Mythic for a little while on Arena. People are just not prepared for it. I mean, you just have a 7/7 Ram and an 8/8 Colossus, and every card in your deck has the word Gate in the title, and it is delightful.
And I think there's just nothing more Ravnica than that. I mean, obviously the guilds are very Ravnica, obviously, but it's like, this is just a thing where I don't know of any other real format or set that could have a lands deck like this.
It's also an important card in that it is a budget deck that isn't an aggro deck. Traditionally, aggro decks are, you know, I don't want to spend too much money on my deck. Play mono white. Play mono red, because the lands are so expensive. This deck, to craft in Arena, requires very few rares. The only rares that you don't already have are Plaza, pretty much. You want to craft like Deafening Clarions, and you want to craft a couple of dual lands. There's no mythics. There's no other rares other than this, and then your uncommons are, you know, your guild summits and your circuitous routes and your stuff like that.
And
so
the Ram and all that.
And the Ram, exactly right.
I was playing this black-white control deck for a while on Arena, and I played against the Gates deck, and I literally had to run them out of cards. It was the only way I could beat them, because like they just kept like laying huge monsters, and I'd be like, okay, Vraska's Contempt or whatever, and my Karn was just not getting through because they had so many Gates Ablaze. They were killing all of the constructs I'd make, and I just draw a bunch of cards, and it was all like removal, and I'm just like, kill it, exile it with Kaya. Like it was, you know, just
you've got to exile though, because those Colossuses will keep coming back.
That's right. So I'd kill the Colossus and exile the Colossus, blah blah blah. Like, and eventually, from guild summits, they just drew themselves their entire deck and they died. It's a great deck though. It's terrific. Aaron, what's your number 8?
My number 8 was spoiled in very unique fashion. I believe it was spoiled by Mike Linneman, and he showed us the art first. And he was like, "Here's some art. What do you guys think it does?" And the art alone was just amazing. The art in this set is amazing. And this artist in particular has had an amazing year, Seb McKinnon. And people lost their minds. And it's funny because he was asking us a question, but no one could focus because this art is just wild. And so when you look at this, when we finally learned what the card did, it was fine. But this art is just amazing. And even if the card doesn't really see any play, just... I can't. It's like a cigarette after making love. It's just like you have that high and then you're like, it's so good. My number 8 is Bankrupt in Blood. So Bankrupt in Blood is 1 colorless and a black. It's a sorcery. It says as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice 2 creatures, draw 3 cards. Dredge does not want this. Stop asking me. But this art, oh my God. Like Seb McKinnon is
crushing it.
Yeah. You see sort of this Orzhov, and it almost reminds me of, it almost seems like a Latin American influence. Like when you look at the Mexican deities of death, it has that kind of robe and the skeleton, and then you have the 2 people with coins and blood coming out of their faces and their heads. And when you deep dive, like I believe also on Close, I think there was a deep dive of the art. It was purposely made this way because the woman is seen as the one who like didn't want to do it, and so she's in the face, and so she's still got to pay though, and just oh my God, I can't. But based on the art alone, this card is incredible.
This card is sweet. Also, a fun fact: the only Magic card with the word bankrupt in its title. I thought was just randomly
Yeah,
interesting.
sure.
Not the most playable. This is one of those cards that you're like, okay, cool. There's going to be this awesome Aristocrats deck, and Wizards was like, hold on,
Right.
Let's not go crazy. It's fine, and there's a cool mechanic that can take advantage of this. But at the end of the day, it's not as powerful as it could have been. Certainly isn't as powerful as the old school Aristocrats was. So
yeah,
kind of
2 is a lot of creatures.
That's a bunch of creatures.
Really cool piece of art, though. It feels like this style of sort of side portraiture feels very Wes Anderson to me. Just feels like a shot from the Grand Budapest Hotel if it were a horror movie. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And it's really cool. The blood turning into the coins that are going into the goblet. It's just a great piece of art.
All right, so let's move on here to number 7, where not only do I have a selection, I share it. And that's awesome, because the idea that we've taken all of the cards in Ravnica Allegiance, all 259 or so, and said, this one right here is the 7th top card from the set. It's already seeing some play. I've seen it in play on the SCG stream this weekend. It's very, very powerful. It's super cool. The artwork is amazing. Of course, Seb coming back. We're doing back-to-back Sebs here because we're talking about Growth Spiral, because Growth Spiral is awesome. And I believe that's Ruben, yes?
It is mine
as
well. My number 7.
Tell us what it does.
So Growth Spiral is an instant, by the way. Would have been good enough as a sorcery. I read this card and thought it was a sorcery, and was like, man, that's a good card. Oh, it's an instant. Oh, we get to keep up our counter spells too. Great.
Why?
Green and a blue, instant, common from the new set. Draw a card. You may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Really cool, really interesting design. Allows you to, on turn 3, for example, keep up your counter spell and ramp still at the end of the turn if they don't do anything particularly relevant. Or if you have another 2-drop, you can go Growth Spiral, or Growth Spiral Quench. That's just on turn 3. On turn 2, you can just ramp from 2 to 4, which is a huge deal. Being able to get up to your circuitous routes or your wilderness reclamations or whatever else you have on turn 4 that you might want to be getting into. It is also a promo card that you can get at I think this is the game day promo.
It looks to be the F&M foil, at least on the bottom. It says F&M.
Okay. And it's a great choice for a promo because it's going to be a 3 or a 4 of in most decks that want to use it. Just a spectacularly good card. It replaces itself. It ramps you. It does all the things that you want it to do.
They haven't put a rampant growth type effect for 2 mana in standard for like a decade, like
without a catch.
I mean, without a bunch of hoops. Like this is instant speed. Yes, you have to have a land in your hand. That's what they're making you with the mana requirements, and you have to have a land in your hand. But ramping from 2 to 4 is big business, and seriously, like they had to change their entire play design about what decks are good and what do you want to do at what type of mana marks. This is the type of stuff that makes Domri cost 4 instead of 3.
Or Llanowar Elves, you mentioned that too, that when you have Llanowar Elves in a format, that changes how green is made.
Exactly. Like how powerful is that 3-drop you get on turn 2? That's what they have to think about all the time. So... But these kind of cards are just insane. Artwork's absolutely amazing. The card's great. Like it's all around fantastic. I love it. Yeah. And it happens to be the number 7th exactly between me and Ruben.
Card's extremely powerful. I mean, the only other rampant growth we have in standard, as far as I'm aware, is Thunderherd Migration.
Yep, and that's a much more strict, I think. In terms of what your ask is.
The only deck building requirement that Growth Spiral asks of you is to be blue and green.
That's it. Aaron, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is really living up to its name. I've seen more than one Twitch clip of this card just doing ridiculous things on Arena. Darkest Mage famously was streaming with this card, proceeded to have his entire board wiped except for this card, but it was still enough to win in the game because his opponent didn't have any flying creatures. Saffron Olive was playing against this card on Arena and watched his entire board disappear just like that, and famously was just like, I don't know how this happened. and this card inspired me to build an EDH deck, even though he's not necessarily my commander. He's certainly going in there. My number 7 is Rakdos the Showstopper. So Rakdos the Showstopper is 4 colorless, red and a black. He's a legendary creature demon, 6/6 flying trample. When Rakdos enters the battlefield, flip a coin. For each creature that isn't a demon, devil, or imp, destroy each creature whose coin comes up tails. And so you're seeing these hilarious moments of people losing their board. What's going to happen? I'm building a demon deck with Liliana's Contract, which is going to be hilarious. And I love everything about this. I'm so Rakdos this set. I don't know where this came from, but I love the flavor of the Rakdos. And from reading the art book, the Ravnica art book, I learned where this ability comes from. So if I understand it correctly, this is Rakdos killing other people's fans, because Rakdos wants to be the biggest draw. And so while he wants people to be entertaining, if you start to get too popular, he'll kill your following so that he's still the better draw. And I'm like, that's so great. And so I don't know what that says about me, that I think that's great, but it is. And this card just lives up to its name. It's so funny, and I cannot wait to cast it in EDH.
This was my number 10. So certainly so thinking that we're both on line with Rakdos is amazing. This is the perfect type of card to create really exciting, interesting moments in Magic. Yes. It's also kind of perfectly costed to be a great casual card. It'll be super fun as a casual deck, but it'll never be tier 1. And as a result, you'll get to have awesome times with Saffron Olives and the Jeff Hoaglands, who are going to just take this and see how ridiculous and how one-sided it can possibly be, which it has been, and it's been hilarious every time.
It's absolutely the showstopper. I think that this is an interesting toe dip for Magic the Gathering into a Hearthstone-style randomizer. Typically, RNG is not the type of randomization that Magic uses. Random number generation, flipping coins, choosing things at random. Right. Typically, our randomization comes from the mana issues. And the luck of the draw, more pure in terms of a card game, more in line with other card games like poker, for example. But this kind of fun, interesting, exciting board it is absolutely a showstopper, and it shows. I think that it shows that you can have one of these every once in a while, because the Twitch clips are probably worth it.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's just like the miracle mechanic, where it's like, yes, they were blowouts, but man, we still talk about them. Like, we can still see that GIF of Brian Kibler and LSV, and just the look. I mean, that's a part of Magic history. Things like this help make those moments, which are awesome. Move on here to number 6. I actually have one. Yay, I got one. And it's not higher. It's not the same. It's not nothing. It's just mine. Okay. Woo. And I'm a little, this is actually the one that I was expecting was going to be higher on someone else's list, because the card itself is so neat and cool, and also has kind of like a really weird fringe thing that's going on as well, which I'll talk about. But Prime Speaker Vannifar, or Vannifar. Vannifar is absolutely awesome. It's a green, a blue, and 2 generic mana for a 2/4 mythic legendary Elf Ooze Wizard. That's right, Elf Ooze Wizard. Tap, sacrifice another creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. It's Birthing Pod on a stick. Yep. And it's also an elf, and it's also an ooze, where we just got an ooze we got an ooze lord, which is really cool. It makes this thing a 3/5.
Been seeing a lot of play this weekend. Yeah,
that card is real and absolutely awesome. And this card, I think, is fantastic.
Biogenic ooze or Vannifar?
Biogenic
the Lord.
Biogenic ooze. Yeah.
So this is an interesting story moment. According to the art book, Zegana. So Zegana and Vannifar were on different sides of the Simic Combine. Zegana was advocating for slow progress, whereas Vannifar was like, we need 3 arms and 8 eyes and 4 boobs. We need to do this. And eventually her side kind of took over and ousted Zegana out. So Zegana is no longer Prime Speaker, and you'll notice that Vannifar's staff is the same staff from the original Prime Speaker Zegana art. So a bit of a power struggle with the Simic. You're seeing the Simic kind of mobilizing and like building armor, which was something the Simic never really bothered with, but they understand that something's coming and they need to kind of bulk up for it. And so very interesting power dynamics here of Vannifar kind of taking over. Birthing Pod being one of those cards that people just can't let go of. It was a very beloved card. People are still sore about it being banned, kind of like Splinter Twin. And so anytime they have an opportunity to sort of do that again, whether it be with Eldritch Evolution, whether it be whatever, there's a little group of people that they're on it, and they're so excited.
Oh man,
I have a confession to make. Okay. And that is that I tried my damnedest to get to Mythic in MTG Arena this first season. I tried so hard. I was playing mono red all season. I was 2 wins away from Mythic, and then I fell to Diamond 4 after like a 6-25 losing streak. And I was like, man, I'm so sick of it. I've got like a week left or a week and a half left. I'm just going to have some fun. So I built up Bant Vanifar and rocked my way to Mythic basically immediately.
Wow.
No one can answer a Vanifar that's active. Unreal. I was brewing around with like Teamer Vanifar because I thought that Rhythm of the Wild was the way to go. Give it haste. I was brewing around with Black because you get access to things like Hostage Taker and then Muldrotha on the top end to get reused out of everything. Turns out Bant's the way to go because the big attraction here is Militia Bugler, which digs you into your Vanifars.
Nice.
The version that I played had like,
I need this deck list like right now. I need it right now in my life.
I had so many random like it was a tribal deck, but it was like 8 tribes because it had Vanifar and Biogenic Ooze. It also had Shalai and Lyra for Angels. It had Silvergill Adept because I had so many Merfolk because I have the Explore package. Oh, by the way, everything is 2 power or less except for the 2 Angels in the deck, so I have Militia. It was crazy. All of the weird interactions that were happening in that deck were bizarre.
I need this deck list in my life right now.
And it was. I don't think that Silvergill Adept's where you want to be with it right now, but Vanifar certainly is, and it's a very powerful archetype. And I, it looks like a joke. And I didn't think that 3-color value creature based, with like Kaya's Wraths and Cleansing Novas, not to mention all these burn spells. I didn't think that that's where you wanted to be. Turns out it's good enough. It took me, like 2 days to get to Mythic with this deck from the bottom rungs of the bottom rungs of Diamond.
Well, I'm glad to see that you tried so hard and got so Vanifar.
Wow. But in the end, Ruben, doesn't even matter, buddy. Just want you to know. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is the hottest multicolor technology that the year 2000 has to offer. And it's been 19 years, and it's time to bring it back. My number 6 is Absorb.
Nice.
Absorb is a white mana, a blue mana, and another blue mana for an instant. And for that low cost, you get to counter target spell and gain 3 life. Really interesting reprint here. First time printed, obviously, in almost 2 decades since Invasion. Introducing it into Modern, which I don't think is going to be that big of a deal. Counterspells aren't particularly that good, particularly 3-mana counterspells, but certainly in Standard, now that we have access to Godless Shrine in particular with Hallowed Fountain, the Esper control decks have been really coming out in force. Absorb being a big piece of that puzzle, being able to gain the life as well as counter whatever the red decks throw at you has really helped the control decks be able to establish board control. One of the best counterspells of all time, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it used to share the stage with Undermine. Now it's sharing the stage with a different blue-black style counterspell in Sinister Sabotage. It is still the 7th most expensive card from the Invasion block, or from the Invasion set. And so if you have your old ones, then you can still use them. And I love me an old bordered card. Just a really fabulous reprint.
Yeah, this was a card that everyone was like, oh my god, what is this going to do to Modern? I'm like, not much more than any other 3-mana counterspell is going to do to Modern, but it's fine. I mean, gaining the life is important, and clearly in a very burn-heavy metagame, it's going to matter more than most. And it's a great card to bring back because all those old foils get to like explode in value, which is always fun to watch. Yeah. Absorb itself, I'm curious. And Ruben, what would you say if you had a triple blue counter-target spell draw card? Is that too good? I feel we're trending there. I feel like that's where we're trending.
That is close. We had Dismiss, which was 2 colorless blue counter target spell draw card.
Right.
And as we've seen in, for example, things like Spectral Procession and that whole cycle, 2 colorless and 1 colored mana can be traded off. Right. Similar. So, man, that's close. That's interesting design space that maybe they'll pursue.
Maybe. I mean, that's a very, very powerful card. It's a little scary, honestly, in some ways, but it's a very exciting card just by the face of it. And again, Absorb is just one of those, when you counter a spell and then you do a thing, one of the best things you can do possibly, of course, is draw a card and replace itself. So that's, do you want to push that button? I don't know, but maybe they will. I guess we'll see. Absorb is a great reprint, though. Aaron, what's your number 6?
So I'm so glad that this set came out when it did, because I kind of talked about it in the show in previous episodes. I was building a Zansha EDH deck, and Rakdos Group Slug is actually a style of EDH deck where you basically play a red-black deck and just kind of cause chaos. You know,
Group
you do a lot of things. It's called Group Slug. Yeah, so you play things like War's Toll, you play Chaos Warp, you play things that just screw up the game, basically. And while you may not win, you're still going to have a really good time and throw everybody off their game. So my deck started off as a Zansha deck, but I couldn't quite do well enough with it. So I wasn't really sure what to do. And then we started seeing all these really, really cool Rakdos cards. And I was like, okay, now this is starting to make sense. Maybe I want to veer off into a Rakdos deck. And what really sealed the deal for me was my number 6. I was a big fan of Demonic Pact back in the day, where you would play Demonic Pact and then here you go, and then give it to some poor bastard and watch them lose the game. So this card was already up my alley, but it was just sort of serendipity. And I didn't know what to do with my commander deck, and then this card came down from above. My number 6 is Captive Audience. So Captive Audience is 5 colorless, a black and a red. It's an enchantment. It says Captive Audience enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice. So automatically, here you go. At the beginning of your upkeep, and that's the opponent who you gave it to, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Your life total becomes 4. Discard your hand, or each opponent creates 5/2/2 black zombie tokens. I love this. I pre-ordered it. I was like, I'm in. And I love everything. I love the flavor of the card. Although I can't quite decide, are we the crowd, or is the person you give the card to the crowd? Like, who's the crowd watching all of this go down? Because if you look at the art, they can't really look away. They're kind of stuck. They're watching all of these terrible things happen. So I'm a little confused about that, but I love the idea in a dedicated kind of chaos deck. Here you go.
This to me is you're sort of installing the audience to look at them as they slowly fall apart from all their terrible choices. I've played against this card. The first mode is always discard in your hand. You're never going to give them the other 2 if you don't have to. And then sometimes you give them zombies. Maybe your life total become 4. I beat this card the only time I ever played against it because I had some flyers, which was good, after I gave them 5 zombies because that was very scary. And I was going to die the next turn. But this card is great.
Card costs 7 for a reason. I mean, Cruel Reality was tough to beat. Very similar 7 mana effect. I am so sorry that I forget the name of the altarist, but the best altar of any card I've seen thus far from Ravnica Allegiance is the surprised Pikachu face.
Yes.
Spattered with some blood sitting in the front row of the captive audience. I forget the name. Good. If someone has it, feel free to comment it down
on Twitter.
I saw it on Twitter. It was just a fabulous alt, just so funny.
That's awesome.
And I love the flavor of all of the Rakdos names of everything. Everything is like a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Everything's a little bit of a pun. Everything is a little bit cynical and a little bit sarcastic. Captive Audience, get the point is a good one. There's the Cult Guild Mage has a Jace puppet.
That sold for $1,000, by the way.
Holy! Yeah. I was expecting it to go for much more. Like, that was so cute.
That piece of art I don't have it within reach, but is in the Ravnica Guildmaster's Guide as well. And I saw that and was like, that is the most adorable thing I've ever seen. Awesome. I love the Rakdos stuff. As someone who self-identifies as Rakdos with my black and my red T-shirt, thanks, Jay Bryan.
Well, I think they finally kind of figured out a way to make Rakdos more interesting, which is go further into the kind of the circus element and further into the sort of the spectacle, the big, showy kind of ridiculousness, and lean into that. Yeah. And lean into it, for sure. Yeah, Sam Stoddard said this was his favorite design, and I can definitely see why. This is one of those cool things that you kind of do to a player. You kind of sort of it's everything but a curse essentially, and I love it.
And the Rakdos storyline going in a very interesting direction. I think Cube April had described it as sort of like a gay pride parade. The Rakdos were sort of underground for a long time, where it's like Ravnica knew, like, if you wanted to have a bit of fun, you knew where to kind of find these things. But the Ravnica, the Ravnos, why am I saying Ravnos? I used to play Vampire. The Rakdos are sort of out and proud now. You know, they're able to wear their garb. We're here. This is what you're in for. Come and get it. And so you're watching them kind of come out from the underground and just kind of be as open. Everybody knew they existed, but you're seeing them in a very different light. And I think it's great. And I never was a Rakdos before, but let me tell you, I love them in this set.
If you're interested in some fun and interesting Ravnica D&D that isn't produced by me, because I'm not the best dungeon master in the world, but Jeremy Crawford is. Jeremy Crawford and Acquisitions Incorporated are presently in Ravnica, and their most recent 2-episode arc episode part 1 sort of ends at Rakdos Circus, and it picks up at that point as well, and it's a really cool storyline.
I also love the latest magic story, the weird love story between like the demon and the effigy girl. It was surprisingly charming. I really liked it.
That's great. Let's move on here to number 5. Now, it is a rare thing when none of us, or when some of us have the same choices. A lot of times it can happen on number 1 because there's like a slam dunk, type of thing.
Right.
But I love it when we're right in the middle because of all the choices, of all the options, we chose the same thing. Now for number 7, it was Ruben, but for number 5, it's for Aaron. That's so cool. I love it. I think that's so great because we just so happen to think that from the top 5 cards of the set, for number 5, we're already talking about Rakdos stuff. But for number 5, if you're going to find something that just checks all the boxes, it's just one of the best pieces of removal. It's got amazing artwork by Seb McKinnon. It's the most efficient they can make it at the colors and the amount of colors that you're paying for it. It's got a terrific, the flavor text includes the words naughty amusement.
I'm listening.
We're talking about number 5 being Bedevil. Aaron, can you tell us what Bedevil does?
Yeah, so Bedevil's 2 black and a red. It's an instant. It says destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. So this is an amazing piece of removal. Seb McKinnon, this is fantastic art. You look at all of the devils, you have the woman, you have the flavor text where people think, you're going to the Ravnos or the Rakdos, and people are thinking it's just a little harmless fun. We're just going to a circus. Oh no, this is very, very dangerous. The card is really, really good. We had Dreadbore, we've had Terminate, we've had things like that, but now we have this card, and this card looks to be very, very good. I'm really excited to see what people can do with it, and just the name, Bedevil. It's just like,
it's really weird how they kind of treat Rakdos like, come on now, how many nights of people being slaughtered in front of other people would it take you to go like, that cult of Rakdos is a dangerous? Well, of course it is. There's bodies and blood everywhere. Like, What are you talking about? It's because I don't understand. It's just kind of silly.
The law system of Ravnica is interesting in that the laws are in place to keep the guilds in place. Mm-hmm. And so murder isn't illegal per se. Specific types of murder and specific types of killing that lead to inter-guild strife or weakening of the guild system. But murder itself is not necessarily frowned upon. It's just a total paradigm shift in your own mental alignment of
right. And the Rakdos aren't picking strangers up off the street. These are people that are going to why do I keep saying Ravnos? They keep going to Rakdos establishments. I'm just looking, I'm cruising, and then whoopsies. It's like, so I think that definitely plays into it. They're not just mindless, bloodthirsty killers. These are people that signed up. These are people that came, and that leads to a whole discussion in and of itself. But I think that's the difference there.
It's just that little wink, wink, nudge, nudge type feel that they all have.
I will say, Aaron, in your defense, one of the nicknames of the Ravnos are the 100 Masked Clowns, if you recall. And there's 100 masked
Devils?
Goblins?
Yeah.
And this art is spectacular. This is one of the early memes during the preview season this is just internet culture, right? This is what it means to be a person on the internet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ruben, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is the only higher on someone else's list.
Oh boy.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, let's move here to number 4. My number 4, I really like, and I think it's really unique. And it's fun to me where Wizards is certainly kind of pushing the boundaries of the power level. of these sets, and it's bound to happen. Essentially, it's where you want to put all this power. If you want to put it all in the spells, which is what they used to do back in the day, where you put it all in the creatures, which they do now. And so as creatures get better and better and better and better, I think you'll also notice a lot of life gain on things, a lot of just like sort of incremental, almost accidental life gain, like do a thing and gain 2 life, or do a so and so and gain life for this and that and the other. But it's awesome when wizards are able to take the most exciting and popular plane. They're able to take an effect that they're just not really comfortable with it at a certain mana cost, but they'll say, you know what? We're in Ravnica, and we can push that mana cost as hard as we want, and we can make it look a little weird, because this can be part of defining the guild itself. Because when Kaya showed up, she's like, we know what we're getting? We're getting 4 mana Wraths, y'all. Because Kaya's Wrath is my number 4. It is absolutely terrific. It is 2 black, 2 white for a rare sorcery that begins with those 3 awesome little words: destroy all creatures. Yeah. And then again, incrementally, randomly, you gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. So if you have to kill your own, you're still getting value out of it. And that type of sort of tagline of, if this just said 3 words on it, we would still probably be pretty excited about it. Like, oh my god, we got Wrath of God back in Standard. That's great. 4 mana Wraths are back. Nowadays, you know, it's like, well, okay, you got to give me my 4 mana Wrath, and you have to give me an upside. Otherwise, I'm not satisfied.
And I think it also plays well with just the Orzhov in general. You know, a lot of the creatures have afterlife, which is a built-in insurance policy to begin with. So not only are you fine if your own things have to go because you're getting creatures out of the deal, but you're also getting life out of it too. And so it all kind of ties into each other pretty nicely.
Yeah, it's really sweet. Yeah, it's a story spotlight card as well.
Right. The only other 4 mana Wraths that are in Standard have huge restrictions on them, and both of them are also black. Ritual of Soot, which only destroys creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, and Phyrexian Scriptures, which essentially has Suspend 1 and also doesn't destroy artifact creatures.
Yeah.
Right.
Kaya's Wrath is the first time that we've seen a true destroy all creatures effect in Standard since, I think, Supreme Verdict? Maybe?
So.
Yeah.
We haven't seen it at 4 mana with the sentence "destroy all creatures."
Yeah.
Since the last time we went to Ravnica. So.
Yeah, it's been like, what, 7 years, 8 years, or whatever, which is insane. But that said, Kaya's Wrath is awesome, and I love it. Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is a card that I was playing with a lot. Had a lot of hype behind it when it was first revealed as well. Old school players will remember how powerful Fires of Yavimaya was. It did very well at Pro Tours. It won Grand Prix. There was an entire article series from Hall of Famers V. Mauschwitz called My Fires, which was one of the premier deck building theory article series of all time, talking about the development of that deck. And for the first time since then, we've had a sort of rebirth of what Fires of Yavimaya could be like printed in Standard. A return, if you will. For example, something that signaled the return of Ilharg the Razeboar. My number 4 is Rhythm of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Colorless red-green gets you an enchantment that has 2 abilities. Creature spells you control can't be countered, surprisingly relevant now in current Standard, and non-token creatures you control have Riot, which is the Gruul keyword. They either enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter or haste. I was messing around a lot with Rhythm of the Wild. Having Llanowar Elves and Rhythm of the Wild in the same format leads to some very explosive plays if you're able to get both of those. I had a lot of fun with my Prime Speaker Vanifar, for example, deck, where I could go Llanowar Elves into Rhythm into Vanifar to be able to do things. There's also a Gruul aggro kind of deck that just plays things like Galta and wants to get Nullhide Feroxes and things like that, give those things haste. And +1/+1 counter synergies are also relevant as well. Just an extremely powerful effect for a very low cost. One of the most powerful one of the most powerful uncommons in the set.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can't look at this card without thinking of the 90s dance classic, The Rhythm of the Night. It's a reference like 4 of you will understand, but if you've ever listened to the Ultimate Dance Party compilation, you're going to totally get it. But yeah, this card is obnoxious. When we did the arena event, I faced a Gruul deck with this, and you get multiple Riot triggers. So something already has Riot, comes into play, you're like, huh, all right, so I'll use that Riot on this, that Riot on that, and then whoop, and it's just like, why?
This was a card that when I was doing the auctions last Friday, was doing the selling off parts of the box in different ways. I originally put this in the rare pile because we were doing it by rarity.
It feels like a rare.
Yeah, because I was like, yeah, you can open rares like Rhythm of the Wild, and they're like, Evan, that's uncommon. And I'm like, oh my god, that card is just so powerful for what it does. It's not that great if you're not on the curve exactly, but if you're on the curve exactly, like it's just your win percentages are stupid at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Llanowar Elves into Rhythm of the Wild, it's hard to lose those games. Aaron, what's number 4?
My number 4 is a card that I never in my life thought that I would ever play, much less enjoy. But it was a huge, very important part of the deck that I played at the pre-release. It was the card I knew, one of the cards I knew that Ruben would be so proud of me for using. The old Erin can't come to the phone right now because she is dead. She's joined the circus. My number 4 is Fireblade Artist.
Nice.
So Fireblade Artist is a black and a red. It's a creature type human shaman with haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, Fireblade Artist deals 2 damage to an opponent or a planeswalker. It's 2/2. So one of the concerns that Kathleen and I had, we both opened Rakdos, was that we were really scared that our little creatures were eventually going to get outclassed by big Simic threats or big Gruul threats that we weren't going to be able to punch through. Right. And so in situations like that, one of the ways that I was able to beat Shivim was that I was able to feed my creatures to the artist and kind of go over Shivim's head. So if I couldn't get through the big adapt creatures, I was just going to go straight for your dome. And I had so much fun doing that. And I just didn't expect to love this card as much as I did. I think I had 2 of them in the deck. And it really made all the difference. It's so flavorful in Rakdos kind of sacrificing its own, me loving to sacrifice creatures, Ruben loving to burn things. I really, really enjoyed this card. And so my deck wouldn't have been as awesome if it weren't for this card. And I really love what it did for my deck.
It's a little bit of Ruben, it's a little bit of Aaron. Come together into one awesome package. This card is exactly what Rakdos needed to be relevant, to have that super powerful, why am I paying red and a black? Like, why am I stretching to play these 2 colors, which traditionally have been pretty bad? And let's make them good again. How are we going to do that? Well, give them a 2/2 haster that can get around no matter what wall or what thing they have. You just throw it at their face until they die.
Right. And it's also a free sacrifice outlet. Now, it is a timed sacrifice outlet. You can't do it in response to things.
Right.
But it is still free. So as long as you're willing to pay the time commitment to be able to use it, it is extremely potent. Typically, you're going to be able to get in for the first attack, maybe if you're lucky, the first 2 attacks, and then you can start throwing your afterlife creatures and your remaining tokens at your opponent after that. It has the word sacrifice right in the name. So, Aaron, it's got a little, it's chocolate and peanut butter. It's all good.
Very nice, very nice. Let's move on here to number 3. And my number 3 has very well maybe Ruben's higher. I don't know. But this card is bananas. It's not seeing, I think, as much play as I would more or less expect it to, based on the power level and how I've sort of felt playing against it or whatever. But of course, metagames are weird and everything will change. But there is a certain amount of play patterns, is the way I would describe it, and repeating play patterns and seeing something happen over and over again, something that is essentially recursive, something that you can get and then find more copies of and get and find more copies of. Squadron Hawk showed us the best way to do this, but there's a certainly more clever way to do this now with a very, very powerful 2-drop in the hands of Growth Chamber Guardian. This card is absolutely a house and is terrific and is a green and generic mana for a rare 2/2 Elf Crab Warrior. Yeah. That has a green and 2 generic mana for Adapt 2. If this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on it, now remember, this is whenever it's put 1 on it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's self with the adapt mechanic. Doesn't matter if you're to put it on with a spell. Whenever a counter is put on it, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So turn 2, you play this. Turn 3, you pay 3 mana. You have a 4/4 that went and got a copy of itself.
Another one replaces itself, yeah.
Which you can then, next turn, have enough mana to both play it and have the adapt trigger ready to fire whenever you want to. This is, like, those patterns are incredibly powerful. Super powerful. And I got to see that in play during the preview event. Definitely got to see it in play as we've been playing Standard the last few days on Arena. This card is a powerhouse.
Extremely potent effect. You're right. Anytime there's even remotely a board stall, if a green deck, probably green-red, but I've also seen green-blue and green-black with this, is sort of needs to establish control. Eventually, you're just going to have 4/4s for drawing one of the cards in the deck. It's very similar to Squadron Hawk in that way. combos very well with Rhythm of the Wild. The untapped target creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Instant, I've seen a little bit of play in combination with this and Incubation Druid. There's lots of interesting ways to put +1/+1 counters on your Growth Chamber Guardians. It's just extremely powerful. It's also fun for me to see the crab arms that are sort of on top of the regular arms, because that is a facet of the Simic hybrid race in Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, where you can be like, oh, you grow crab arms at, I think, like 5th level or something, which is kind of weird. But then you see what it looks like, and you're like, okay, sure, the adapt makes sense in that way, right? It starts out as just a 2/2, but now it's got the crab arms, and it's stronger, and it's bringing more of its friends.
That's awesome. All right, Ruben, what's your number 3?
I mean, we had to talk about the red deck at some point. And I guess I'm going to have to be the guy that's hashtag on brand, right?
Yeah, I hide mine with a little bit of black. It's like, I'm not like you people.
Yeah. I am mono red. Wow. Mountains as far as the eye can see. Red Mountains Majesties. And this was actually the first card that we saw from Ravnica Allegiance. We also saw it in a foreign language, so we didn't know that Spectacle was the name of the ability just yet. And we saw the card and wondered if this could be good. Is this divination for red? Turns out it's better than divination for red. My number 3 is Light Up the Stage. 2 colorless and a red for a uncommon sorcery, but it has Spectacle of just 1 red mana. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards.
This card is stupid.
This card is very stupid. Being able to play a 1-drop, either Fanatical Firebrand or Gitu Lava Slinger or Footlight Fiend, something along those lines, getting in for the 1 damage to be able to activate Spectacle, immediately getting card advantage in a deck that's very difficult traditionally to get card advantage. Most of the season, I'd been playing an Experimental Frenzy deck in my mono red deck, which is a bit more of a traditional red deck wins, which has a little bit of a late game associated with it. A lot of folks have been moving to Risk Factor. Again, a more traditional later game card advantage card. This one, though, allows you to get your card advantage while you're dealing your damage. It's so much more velocity, turning you into much more of a lava spike deck. If you ever read the deck builder guide that Patrick Chapin wrote, it's much more streamlined, much cheaper. You get to run fewer lands as a result of being able to run Light Up the Stage. Just a spectacularly good card. The flavor, again, in Rakdos is amazing. Light Up the Stage, places everyone, says Judith. And it's just a really, really good card.
This is the exact type of card where I was playing the red deck, and I said the only way I get out of this is if I draw Light Up the Stage, and then I draw X and I draw Y from it, and that has happened multiple times. This card is absolutely ridiculous. It is until the end of your next turn. That is the magic next language. Turn. You can play lands from this. The Steam Can is insane. The Steam Can is nuts. I move the counter from the Steam Can, play another Steam Can, put a counter on the first one, then skewer the Critics you, because that's Spectacle is still turned on because that's a thing. Right. It's amazing how good this card is. It's amazing.
Yeah, I said before, I like red when it's not doing red things. I'm not interested in just the jam lightning bolts strategy. I need a little bit of finesse. I need a little bit of style. I need a little bit of spectacle. Let's put it that way. And so, I love cards like Experimental Frenzy. I love cards like this that really force you to, okay, first off, how am I going to get spectacle? And then when I have it, what am I going to do? I love the way that this is giving red card advantage in a very unique way. I was really hoping to have opened some of this card in my pre-release pack, and I didn't, but I love what it's doing. It's almost like a Faithless Looting, dare I say. And this is a card I would absolutely play if I was in that sort of style of deck.
It's one of those cards that, like, I want to draw as many copies as possible, because every single time it feels a little like cheating. And just like, I'm a red deck, excuse me, that's playing these 1 mana haster guys, and then I get to play 1 mana to draw essentially 2 cards, and I can use that mana however I want. And I can play when you can play the mountains that you reveal from Light Up the Stage, it's so good. It's so good. It's like you didn't even have to spend your turn playing your own mountain. Like, Light Up the Stage took care of it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the fact that some of the most powerful play lines in the mono red deck involve you not playing a 2-drop on turn 2 and instead involve you playing a Light Up the Stage and another 1-drop are pretty insane.
Yeah.
I have heard rumor that this will rebirth the old blue-red Delver strategies in the older formats.
Interesting.
particularly Legacy. People seem excited about this card for Legacy. To be able to have your Monastery Swift Spears and your Delver of Secrets and your Light Up the Stages to be able to recoup card advantage.
Man, Light Up the Stage is not messing around for real. This card is amazing. Aaron, what's number 3?
I prayed to have this card in my pre-release pack. I was the little girl at the end of the bed looking up at the moon like, please, God, I will be so nice if you just let me have this card. And my pre-release pack was not great. I famously told the story about how Surge helped me rebuild my deck to great effect into the version that you all got to see on camera. But my first couple of packs were not great. But I did happen to open this card. And I remember I did this huge gasp. I was in another corner of the moon base just building my deck. And I opened this card and I went, and like everyone jumps and they're like, because they couldn't see me. I was in another side of the moon base and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, and I knew if I could just resolve this card, everything would be okay. And this card didn't do as much lifting as I had thought. It actually did a lot more work during our arena event where I really got to show it off and do some ridiculous things with it. My number 3 is Priest of the Forgotten Gods. So Priest of the Forgotten Gods is 1 and a black. She's a creature type human cleric, 1/2. You can tap her, sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each loses 2 life and sacrifices a creature. You add 2 black and draw a card. Holy value.
There's a lot of stuff.
I played this during our arena event in an Orzhov list built by Ross Miriam. And so you're sacrificing your witnesses, and then you're sacrificing your tithe takers, getting spirits for your trouble. And then that's more bodies that you can feed to this thing. I was killing Niv Mizzets. I was killing Lyras. You would get opponents that were so proud of themselves. They would tap out for a Niv and you'd be like, whoop. And it just feels amazing. My She-Ray deck, I famously have a She-Ray EDH deck. This is power. So if you're sacrificing 1 power creatures, those creatures come back and you can do it again. This card is just broken. I love the engine that it generates and it just feels so good.
Wow, this card is the best card in the She-Ray deck. It powers out a turn 3 She-Ray.
So good.
Yeah, it's amazing. This is the type of card that I can only imagine how many times they sort of change the numbers and change the stuff. It's like, I'm sure it gave you a card at first and they're like, well, it's got to do a little bit more than that. Why don't we just gain a mana? And it's like, well, why don't you just give them 2 mana? Like, all right, give them 2 mana. Like the ability to try to sort of, make that aristocrats thing work and to give them just the right enablers. Like, what are the cards that you're looking for and what is it supposed to do? And well, they're going to lose creatures, you're going to lose creatures, but you're going to get a card and you're going to get mana and you're going to somehow make this engine work. And I don't think it quite synergizes maybe the way they were expecting it to, or maybe we just haven't found the right shell. But this is a card that is dangerous because of those shells existing. This is going to be an all-star if they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
this card seems super powerful. I was messing around in my pod journeys. I was messing around with this card in the blue, black, green version of Pod, particularly in a Slimefoot-centric version with lots of Saprolings and Yavimaya Sapherd, and this card is pretty good. It's good living. It's good, solid living.
Come here, Ruben. We got cookies. Come to the dark side.
Yeah. I was having a ton of fun with all of my Death Spore Thalids and my, it was not great, but it was fun. And this is, this reminds me of Skursdag High Priest, which saw a lot of play in Standard. There's some elements of powerful 1/2s for 2 mana. That you need specific play lines and you need some specific deck building. Things, Stoneforge Mystic needed a lot of the right pieces around it in order to be overpowered. Skursdag High Priest needed a lot of the right pieces around it in order for it to be a powerhouse. Priest of the Forgotten Gods may not make it to that point. It may not, but it may. And we just haven't seen exactly what it can do.
Let's move on here to number 2. All right. So for my number 2, I would describe as a little aggressive. I like this card a whole lot. I think this card is secretly one of the best cards in the set. I think we're seeing this on the streams over the weekend, that this is one of the best cards of the set. I love it when Wizards gets really clever and they do something that you're like, wait a minute, you just did the thing. Well, I didn't think you were doing the thing. And they're like, yeah, because they're cool like that. It's a mythic rare that is, I think, like, I've just started playing against it, and I just started playing with it, and this thing is fantastic, and Biogenic Ooze is the truth, and I think people are going to recognize that this card is dangerous, and this card is scary.
It's been all over the open this weekend.
It does not take long for this card to be bananas. Biogenic Ooze is the Ooze Lord that we didn't know was an Ooze Lord. It's it's super clever. It's 2 green, 3 generic mana for a mythic ooze. When it enters the battlefield, you make a 2/2 ooze creature token. At the beginning of your end step, you put a +1/+1 counter on each ooze you control. That's the Lord part. And for 3 green and a generic mana, you create a 2/2 ooze creature token. So it is an army in and of itself, pumping all of the armies permanently, not just like +1/+1 until this dies. No, those things get big forever. So essentially, the first turn, you're going to have 2 3/3s, and then you're going to have 2 4/4s. And if you spend any mana, you can have a whole lot more than that. And this thing gets out of control super quickly. I think this card is absolutely fantastic, and that's my number 2.
Yeah, card's fantastic. This was alongside Lyra and Tristani at various points in that Prime Speaker deck. You have a Biogenic Ooze, which, oh, by the way, pumps your Vannifar out of lava coil range.
Yeah, it does.
The fact that it creates more as the game goes on, this thing just is a board state by itself. You just pay 4 mana and make another ooze, and pay 4. Once you get up to 8 mana, you make 2 oozes a turn, and you don't need to play spells for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Ishkana in that by itself it's fine, but when you realize it's sort of an army in a can, it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
It gets
or Regal Caracal was another one where it's like, well, that's cute. Oh, wait, you're getting 6 power for that? Okay.
Right. It's scary when mono green gets that, because Siege Gang Commander exists and Tristani exists, but the deck building requirements needed for those cards are a lot steeper than the color that makes more green mana. This is very easy to get on turn 3.
I love that they tried to make the activation cost look hard. They were like, well, it's 1 and 3 green, you guys. And it's like, oh.
Like, oh no, don't do that to us. Anything but that, please.
Right. I'm pretty sure green will find a way.
In our Shockland, Checkland mana-based format, I don't think it's going to be too tough.
I mean, between Incubation Druid making essentially all of those 3 green mana for you with one little tap, whew, that card is so weed. Ruben, what's your number 2?
I definitely should have had Light Up the Stage as my number 2 because it draws you 2 cards. And I should have had Skewer the Critics as my number 3 because it deals 3 damage. But it's my number 2 because it's Lightning Bolt.
Nice.
We got Lightning Bolt back in Standard. Aaron doesn't get out of bed for a Lightning Bolt, but I do. I get out of bed for Lightning
I burrow deeper in the covers, in fact. Just pull them over my head.
Deep in the covers.
Skewer the Critics is 2 colorless and a red if you're paying retail, but we ain't paying retail. It has Spectacle of a red, just like our last card did. Or my last card did. It's a sorcery, and it deals 3 damage to any target. I mean, we've got bolts, man. We got bolts in Standard
Modern.
again.
It's seen playing Modern.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
so many wizards to be able to turn on your Wizard's Lightning. Now you can deal your damage with your Lava Runners and your Pyromancers and get an extra bolt out of it. One of the biggest problems for the red deck is Wild Growth Walker. Having more efficient 1 mana answers to be able to deal with it, as well as being able to go upstairs, are huge. I just love throwing a chandelier at people. That always seems fun. And the pun of skewering the critics, I just love it.
It's terrific. This card is, and for those, I don't know if we actually spelled it out. Spectacle is you may cast the spell for the spectacle cost if an opponent lost life this turn. So if you dealt them damage, if they paid life for something, all of a sudden your spectacle is turned on. Really cool effect in Arena, by the way. But
oh man, the chains. It's so good.
It's super cool. But look, Skewer the Critics, like this is real. Like if anyone had any doubts, this card is real. It's playable. It's in everything. Like the red deck, when it gets going, if I'm not playing against literally wildgrowthwalker.deck / all the Lyras, like I've killed multiple Lyras and still won games. The red deck is ridiculous right now.
Spectacular.
And
it can kill on turn 4 very easily.
Yeah.
If uninteracted with. Even if interacted with. Even if there's life gain on the other side. You're able to take out blockers and still be able to push through tons of damage, particularly those crazy runaway Steamkin draws.
Yeah, and you get the Light Up the Stage draws, which, turn you into Chain Whirlers, into whatever, and you're taking the stuff on the Steamkin, putting the counters back on. Like, it gets ridiculous, and Skewer the Critics is the truth. Aaron, what's number 2?
I called my deck at the pre-release holding out for a hero because I knew that there was one card that was really going to make the whole deck work. My deck was risky as hell, but everybody was like, if you can get this to work, you're golden. And so it was a very risky thing to do to play my deck, and I really needed one card, and as luck would have it, I found the card quite a bit. My first game against Shivam went much better than my second one, but when I had this card, my deck played so well, and I had no idea the card would perform as well as it did, and people have even kind of gotten hip to this card and have started tagging me in the card. People who are playing Arena, people who are playing at their pre-releases are calling it the Aaron Campbell special, and I think it's great, because this is another card that you would never look at and think me, but here we are. My number 2 is Hero of Precinct 1. Hero of Precinct 1 is 1 colorless and a white. She's a creature type human warrior 2/2. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. And so I was playing a Mardu Aristocrats deck, which was very easy. I was running maybe 8 or 9 multicolored spells. This card was constantly going off. And then you would have fodder for your Fireblade artist. And so if you couldn't really get through the wall, you're pitching these humans to the Fireblade. And if you can get through, that's cool too. But this card did work. This was really the all-star of my deck. My deck wouldn't have worked as well without it, and it's great to see other people picking it up too and realizing how powerful it is. It's currently going for about $4 right now. Saw a little bit of play this weekend at the Open, and I'm excited to see what people who are better than I am, better brewers than I am, better players than I am can do with this card, because it's the truth.
Yeah, this card is absolutely terrific. The idea that you continue to get free value, the idea that you can have multiples of these out and every multicolor spell gives you 2/2/2s. Like, I saw that on coverage and I was like, oh my God, they mortified something.
And there are so many. What really makes this card good is that you don't have to try. Like, there are just good multicolored cards that you would run anyways, whether you had this card or not. This is just more of an incentive to do that. Frighteningly easy to turn on. One of those cards that, like, you don't even remember, like, because you're just doing things and it's like, oh, right, I get a token too, and then your opponent's like, goody, you know, because they're already in trouble.
It's what I would describe as sort of the Tarmogoyf effect, which is you don't need to try to make this card good. It's just good, and so you're like, okay, cool. I don't have to go through any hoops. I'll just go ahead and play Magic, and while I'm playing Magic, this will just do awesome things.
Yeah,
and that's
there have been some really interesting builds with Hero of Precinct 1. Obviously, Mardivas is really popular. A Nick Prince special that takes advantage of this with a bunch of the Rakdos and Orzhov cards. Wyatt Darby came out with his Esper mid-range deck, which utilizes Hero of Precinct 1 alongside the new Planeswalker 3-mana Dovin and things like Orzhova Bellhaunt or Basilica Bellhaunt.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of, and just things like Mortify.
Yeah.
That you want to be fighting alongside with Hero of Precinct 1. Extremely powerful effect. Anytime that a 2/2 for 2 is able to bring along more help alongside of it, things like Precinct Captain have seen play over the years. It's a very powerful effect if you can untap with it.
Absolutely. This card, I think, has a long future ahead of it to be seen in Standard and maybe older formats. Who knows? Because is it a human? It's a human, right?
Yeah, human.
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, it's always with the creature types these days. All right. That's a weird, like, long-term problem that Magic has that is just kind of unique in terms of, like, the game and how the game works and how older formats work. You're like, okay, you can't make any more good humans because you kind of keep busting them. And
human is the most populous creature type in the history of Magic with over 2,000 entries. The next closest, I think, is Warrior with like 1,200. It's wow. I mean, there's a lot of them.
All right, let's move on here to our number 1. Aaron, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is a card that people were immediately enchanted with for various reasons. One, we couldn't believe the name, both because it was so ordinary and yet extraordinary at the same time. 2, because of the art. The art was glorious. There were people like Maria Bartholdi that were like, I'm cosplaying now, and I'm cosplaying this card right here. The abilities, it has some amazing abilities. I talked about playing an aristocrat style deck before. This is something where if you're going to play aristocrats, you need to have this card. Also some hilarious moments. Evan, you had a hilarious time with this card and an opponent who had hexproof and couldn't target themselves or couldn't target you.
Right. You had Gruul Spellbreaker,
so they had to target themselves. And so it just checks off so many boxes, and I couldn't think of a card that I'd want more than my number 1, which is Judith the Scourge Diva.
Yeah.
So Judith is 1 colorless, a black and a red. She's a legendary type creature, human shaman, speaking of humans. 2/2. Other creatures you control get +1/+0. Fine, you'll take it. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Judith deals 1 damage to any target. That's players, creatures, planeswalkers. Changes combat math incredibly. And just an amazing card. You look at this and she's just this amazing performer being carried by 2 muscled Rakdos dudes. She doesn't really have a real influential role in the guild. If you read the art book, a lot of people wondered if maybe she replaced Xava. What happened to Rakdos? No, they're all still around, but she's just one of their top performers.
Yeah.
And obviously she's doing the guild proud. You look at the artwork and it's beautiful. The artist has since released a lot of behind the scenes sketches of all the ways she could have initially turned out. She's currently going for between $8 and $10 right now, depending on the website that you're on. But yeah, I mean, turning your creatures into these pingers is really, really cool. Again, if Aristocrats is going to be a thing, you got to invite her to the party. But you think of a name like Judith, it's like something you'd name your postwoman or the woman at the PTA meeting. And here she is being this amazing card. And just everybody was like, I need to know who this is. Like, this is amazing.
I mean, it's our first diva, right?
Yeah, right.
ain't no more divas than this one.
What?
And the thing to keep in mind about this girl that really just shocked me was that, you know, the most important part of the Glorious Anthem is the first part, is the +1/+0 part, is the making your attackers larger, because hitting her on curve is just ridiculous.
Crazy, yeah. And in the Mardivas deck, if you go Footlight Fiend into Hero Precinct 1, into this, make a token, attack for 5, get Wrath Protection, that's a tough start to beat.
Yeah, it really is. And this card just like was everywhere and just super impressive. Gave me an absolutely hilarious moment. I think they clipped it. You can find it on the Twitch clips that someone did. Because, you know, when Cruel Spellbreaker gives you an itself X-proof and they got to deal 1 damage to something, that's not a May. Somebody's getting hurt. That's what Judith gets to do. She was my number 9.
She was my number 5.
Nice. Okay.
So
very nice.
We all agree that she is well deserving of a spot.
Yeah, she was absolutely terrific. All right. Ruben, what is your number 1?
When we took part in the streamer event, we were playing some fun decks. We were doing some things. And then after the streamer event, we did our show. And then after our show, I was like, I kind of want to keep playing with these new cards and see what's up. And I ended up playing against this card first from the Magic Streamer Show, SJOW. Who's a member of Team Liquid, very popular Hearthstone pro, well known for his control archetypes in that game, has since moved over to Magic. And he absolutely decimated me with this card. And since then, there has been a lot of talk. If this card is too good, if this card will be banned at some point during its lifespan in Standard, is this card broken? Can this card be broken? Is this card remotely fair? And the answer to that question is no. I don't think that Wilderness Reclamation is remotely fair. I think it's a design mistake, and I haven't seen one of those in a while. Yeah. Wilderness Reclamation is 3 colorless and a green for an enchantment. Speaking of powerful enchantments from this set, it's an uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. So you're essentially able to double your mana starting as early as turn 4, as long as you have the deck building requirement that the things you're doubling your mana for are activated abilities or instants. One of the activated abilities that you want to be using a lot is the Sunken Ruin, the backside of Search for Azcanta, or Arch of Orazca, to be able to draw a bunch of extra cards. And the instants that you can play alongside this include Nexus of Fate. So the Bant Nexus decks, the Turbo Fog kind of strategies have been using Wilderness Reclamation, not to mention the Bant Flash archetypes that have been using this alongside March of the Multitudes. There is a Teamer archetype that uses this with Expansion Explosion to be able to deal 1 billion damage with their X spell and draw 1 billion cards. I think that this card is going to really ruin things for a long time. I think it's a very powerful effect, and it's a wording that they never use. This is not Seedborn Muse. This is not Mercfiend Liege. This is at the beginning of your end step, and they stack. It's not like, it's not, 2 Seedborn Muses don't do what this does, and it doesn't do it on your turn.
So if you have 2, let me just make sure I understand. So if you have 2, you untap the lands from the first one, and then are you saying that you can tap in response to the next one?
These are triggers, yes. Yep. So let's say you have Wilderness Reclamation on turn 4. Turn 5, you play a comes into play tapped Shockland and play another Wilderness Reclamation. stack. First one resolves. Float 5 mana. Second one resolves.
Now you have 10 mana. I built and played Todd Anderson's Wilderness Reclamation deck on Arena. It's very difficult to play on Arena. Every single turn, you have to tell it you want to stop on your end step. Every single turn, you have to hold control to get full control, and that takes some time. But he also played with Primal Amulet, which is a 4 mana artifact. Whenever you play an instant or sorcery, you put a counter on it. Once you've done that 3 times or 4 times, you flip it over. 4 times, you flip it over, and when it makes a mana of any color. But if you're playing a spell with that mana, you get to copy it. So I will literally explosion you to death the instant that thing turns over. And it's happened.
You can play Explosion for 7, but copy it twice.
And then it's 14. And then it's 21 if you're copying it twice. Like, that's a real thing that I did. I killed somebody. I was like, you draw 7 and you take 7, and you draw 7 and you take 7, and they died. And it was great.
I think that was the thrust of Todd Anderson's deck this weekend. Was he was playing with it and just blowing faces off, and it was like, oh God, what have we done?
I don't think it's going to be banned, but I've clearly been wrong about that before. See also Jace the Mind Sculptor. But I also think that they brought back Mortify, and I think understanding that enchantment hate is important is a thing.
Ruben said that, yeah.
I don't think necessarily I don't think Wizards knew exactly how good this was. This feels like flew under the radar. Yeah, just flew under the radar. No one really played with it, tested with it, and they're like, oh my God, pants down moment of we went too far. And made
I will say that the number 1 player on Mythic as of this recording is a Magic pro named Mani Davuti, and the deck that he made number 1 with was a Wilderness Reclamation deck. And because of the best of 1 format and how prevalent the mirror is, he's playing a Nexus of Fate Bant control deck, Turbo Fog, with a Night of Autumn in it to deal specifically with copies of this card.
Yeah, it's
that important.
It's warping in a weird way, and we're going to see how warped it actually can get. It's weird. I think at some point, some people just don't play with it because they just don't like playing those types of decks. They don't like those types of strategies. It's weird. It's kind of swingy. If you don't always get your enablers, you could just die.
It's really tough to play against. It's really tough to watch it go off. Again, this is the kind of the Sphinx's Revelation effect where you don't know you've lost, but you have to wait 10 minutes to find out you've lost. Yeah. That's what's happening with these Nexus of Fate decks that are just powered further by Wilderness Reclamation.
There you go. So we'll move on here to my number 1. My number 1 has been seeing a ton of play at the Open Series event this past weekend. It has kind of come out of its shell, as it were.
I see what you did there.
And it's got a lot of different layers because it's a bunch of different weirdo creature types. I'm
so glad this is your number 1 because I'm kind of embarrassed it wasn't on my list.
It's okay. I didn't have Light Up the Stage on mine, so we can both feel shame. And I'm going to figure out how to say it the right way. It's Hydroid Krasis, and Hydroid Krasis is awesome. This card is bananas. It's
ridiculous.
It is a blue, a green, an X for a creature jellyfish Hydra Beast. It is mythic, and when you cast this spell, remember, when you cast it, not when it enters the battlefield, you gain half X and draw half X cards, round down each time. Flying, trample. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. And let me tell you, Havoc is a small price to pay for data because when I first I built the deck and I turned my 4 mythic wild cards into this thing, made the deck thing, started playing it, I drew it, and I was just like, what I thought it was, I essentially was treating it kind of like XX, you know what I mean? Because you're getting half the cards, you would get half the counters, and it's like, no, I can get a 5/5 flying trample that draws me 2 cards and gains me 2 life, and
for 7.
It was mind-boggling because each Hydroid Krasis fuels the next Hydroid Krasis, and you can just get these huge monster, just chains of these ridiculous creatures, and it's seen play everywhere. It's up to $40 or something.
Wow, $30. Why?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It is
Card's
blown
ridiculous.
up.
It slots directly in to the green-black sort of mid-range decks that had some trouble ending games against other mid-range and control decks. There would be board stalls. It would be tough to gain card advantage. The best way to do it was Vivian Reed. People started using Midnight Reaper, which was a liability against the red decks. So they were having a little bit of trouble trying to figure out how to get over the top. Now those decks are running Hydroid Krasis and basically putting Sphinx's Revelation into their green-black decks, which is spectacularly good because Explorer gives you card quality, but it doesn't really draw you cards, right? And so being able to just put Hinterland Harbors in your green-black deck, it also has Memorial to Folly in it to rebuy your Krasis.
Remember, you also have Find and Finality. I have Find for 2 Krasis has happened, and
get them all back.
It was filthy.
And just like Sphinx's Revelation, this is the closest approximation to Sphinx's Revelation we've actually had in a long time. Because just like Sphinx's, Krasises find more Krasises in your deck. The first one's a 4/4 that draws 2, gains 2. The next one's a 7/7 that draws 3, gains 3. Then it's a 9/9 that draws 4 and gains 4. And those, if they don't just end the game by themselves, those are finding you the finalities. They're finding you the memorials. They're exploring you deeper into your deck. They're doing all of those things. Extremely powerful card. Super difficult to beat. The best things that I've seen as answers to this, people are starting to run Entrancing Melody to be able to gain control of them. I've seen Angwrath, the Flame Chains, to be able to take the life off as well, and then sacrifice it because its converted mana cost is 2. Just some really interesting things that people are doing specifically because this card exists.
I think there was some hesitation because it's half of the X and that's not enough, quote unquote. Oh, it's enough. Oh, it's definitely enough. I don't care if you count it or not.
Flying and trample. Why?
It's
does all the things.
It reminds me of like when you were a kid and you would prank phone call somebody and you would close your eyes and like point to a number in the phone book and you're like, what abilities are we going to give it? Whoop, whoop, whoop. There we go. Like, why?
So to me, the trample is the beast part. The flying is the jellyfish part, and the X +1/+1 counters is the Hydra part. Am I correct in assuming that jellyfish fly?
Yeah,
they tend to historically. Like you had Narcomoeba, you have a lot of the other amoebas and things.
Like Manowar didn't, but that's more or less the most famous one. Other jellyfish have. That said, Hydra Krasis is amazing, and we're just
spectacularly good.
We're just getting started on that card, let me tell you. Well, that was our top 10 Ravnica Allegiance cards. You will see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the honorable mentions next week. Lots of cards we didn't touch on today that I think are rife for your comments.
Absolutely. Move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-host, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching and listening, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mike subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.